everyone. I'm Ashley Walter, and I am here with Amanda Ryan, the Assistant Dean at BSU's College of Innovation and Design, and the Director of Beer and Wine Studies program. And I chose her because she has been bringing her entrepreneurial spirit in bringing this Beer and Wine Studies program to BSU. And I've been collaborating more with her lately and just seeing all the amazingness and the work behind the scenes and how she's really driving in that entrepreneurial spirit within a university like BSU, where there sometimes tends to be like constraints. And so I've just been really impressed with Amanda's entrepreneurial spirit in making this program come to life. So welcome, Amanda. Do you want to maybe give a brief background about yourself and introduce yourself?
Sure. Amanda Ryan, currently the Assistant Dean of Operations in the College of Innovation and Design. I've been with CID, as we call it, since 2018. Prior to that, I worked about 6 years over at Idaho State University's College of Pharmacy, doing assessment and accreditation, which was a big shift from my past life where I lived and breathed all things kind of beverage world. So I have a very non-traditional background. So I was a college volleyball player and on scholarship, and really lost and didn't know what I was doing with my life. And in true college 21-year-old Amanda fashion, decided I'm not going to do this anymore. And I actually left college before completing my degree the first time, after I had completed a season of volleyball and in the spring, and was like really considering, what am I doing with my life if I'm not an athlete? All of these things, hard questions to answer when you're 21. And so I took a pause. I left Southern California. I was down at a Cal State school down there, and moved back to Oregon, and wasn't sure what I was doing with my life. Had to get a full-time job if I wasn't going to school. Wasn't fully decided that I was going to quit school. So I took a few part-time classes at a community college to try and like reground myself, because I was a psychology major, and I realized you can't really do a lot when you're a psychology major unless you continue on. So from there, I taught myself how to brew beer. And so that was what I just dove into and fully dove and committed into. So as soon as and completely self-taught, the day and age where you had to go like pick up a book, right? Yeah. Internet was a thing, but not really. And we didn't have the access we have now. So it was very much like you're still going to the library for these things. And so I turned that like newfound passion and kind of my search for myself into all things beer. And so I immediately got my first job at a little brew pub in Ashland, Oregon. It's called Standing Stone. And I was a server. I was also already working in hospitality, and I had for years. So I used to work at the airport and like a few things in Portland when I was up there. So I've always just kind of dabbled in that space, because I think they're great jobs to have while you're also going to school. And so I went full geek mode on just like everything production with beer while I was serving. And then I met someone that we then moved to the East Coast, and I just bounced from brewery, winery, distillery. And so, I think it's 5 breweries, 2 distilleries, 1 distillery, 2 wineries. My coffee hasn't kicked in yet. And so I kind of just followed my passions. And that was one thing that I like really knew that I needed to do to make myself feel good about my choices, and especially my decision to like leave college.
Yeah.
So that's probably too long for your intro, and you can cut this
great.
Out. But
that's a great understanding. So fast forward now to, I guess, the last 2 years in the making. You've kind of been behind the scenes building this program around beer and wine studies. Can you share a little bit about what the program is and kind of what led you to want to create the beer and wine studies at BSU?
Ah, passion, grit, determination, all those things are required whenever you're doing something hard. So, I left Napa, California, where I was working for a brewery and winery, and I moved to Idaho after visiting one time. And when I was making that transition and getting out of the beer and wine industry and coming into academia, I always said, I'm going back to do something with beer and wine. Like, this is my love and the thing that I think that I'm most fulfilled by. And I love the people, and I just love the hard work behind it. So it's a bit of, wanting to make my passion turn into like my reality and what you manifest, right? So in my departure and my time in academia, I saw a huge opportunity when I moved to Boise. I moved in 2012. If you were here at that point, our restaurant scene was really lacking. Our brewery scene was just emerging. We had a few, things happening. Wine was really up and coming on the map. And so I kept my hands in it with a part-time job so that I could stay abreast of like industry trends and make sure that I wasn't too far removed.
Yeah.
At this time, I also had a really good friend starting a winery out of his garage. And so I've been consulting, helping that along the way. And full circle, when I made the transition to Boise State from Idaho State and was finishing up my PhD, I thought, well, there's a definite need for this, and Idaho is not serving this population. And so that's like one thing that you always want to assess as an entrepreneur is there a gap or a need? Because market saturation does nothing good for you if you're trying to do something that has already been done. Right. Even if you're trying to differentiate a little bit, you truly just need to find that space where you fit and fulfill demand. And so I drafted in 2018, like right after I first came, because I knew this was my goal, a plan for just a beer certificate at the time. And then people knew that I have this wine background, which is a really weird thing, right? I'm like, beverage is more kind of my wheelhouse because I've just been exposed so much. So I was pushed to consider cider and wine and things like that. And I was like, okay, sure. Like beer is really like the thing that got me into this path. And so I just feel like such a strong sense and love for that. But I also equally love wine and cider and just beverages.
Well, because it's like cider is the middleman between beer and wine.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's like if you're doing beer, you might as well do cider. But if you're doing cider, you might as well do wine too.
There's so much overlap and similarity and like common language, when you're talking fermentation and things too. So it's kind of natural, but people do get siloed into one aspect. And so it's been to my advantage to have a little bit more of a diverse background for this. Yeah. So I also was working operations and management in breweries and wineries. So I had the behind the scenes. I know the compliance deeply. And so when I was drafting this up at Boise State and working with associate deans and a few other pieces, and then ultimately got told like the timing's not right. This is really hard to do in Idaho. That's been the messaging. Oh, so-and-so's wanted to start this, but they weren't able to get it off the ground. Or I'm like, well, let me try, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to try. I'm happy to fight those battles. I have a bit of common language that I can use because I can kind of thread between like the compliance, the legislation pieces, the code, the state law, because I used to live and breathe that with every label approval and TTB report that we were producing. And so that has helped me be prepared for like building this thing. But I was told no. I was told no. I had to pause it. And then I just kept pushing. And I guess it's tenacity or stubbornness, maybe a combination of both. But I just kept making the ask, can I please just teach one class? Can I just show you that Boise State students could benefit from this? There's jobs. It's a vast market. We need more well-trained people. And so I finally got the yes in fall of 2023.
Yeah, and we've been reading the Lean Startup, and they talk a lot about reiterating, testing, reiterating, and just creating a minimum viable product. And so this segues great into your minimum viable product, which we call an MVP, of being the class. So how did that first class turn out? I mean, it was really like putting all your theory into play. And can you tell us about the attendance and how that first class initially went and kind of where it's taken off from there?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you that I was terrified, because anybody that tells you they're not terrified when they're in this new space that's extremely risky is lying to you, because it can be scary. But I was also very, very excited. I had a short period to actually get everything that has lived in my head and that I've known for years into like a class format built for my students. I am not building this for me. I built it to some extent to industry. Like, I think that comes after, but I built it with a student first mentality, because those are my customers.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they vote with whether or not they are registering for the classes, right? So it's very similar to people vote with their dollars in commerce. So I approached it like that. I approached it like the way that we would have to when we were releasing a new beer that was starting from scratch, which is how are we going to do this? Well, I did word of mouth advertising only. And I did that intentionally because we're in a space that kind of competes with U of I. I had originally opened it to 50 seats because I just was like, oh, I can get 50 students, no problem. And then after my dean like grounded me and said, do not offer a class the first time with 50 students, I was like, okay. And we settled on 20. And he was amazed that I got 20. So I get the students there, right? And then I have to take them through the process of learning from scratch, because you have to always remember your audience. And my audience is a 21, 22-year-old that has only drank Coors Light maybe.
Right.
Or a few of them don't even like beer. A few of them are just like, I'm here because I was curious and because my mom or dad is really into this, right? And I needed a 3-credit elective. So I kept that in mind. I, tried some things. I think I softly failed. You have to be willing to fail and recover and not take it personally. I checked in with my class repeatedly. Like, our attendance would be a reflection on like, how did you think this thing went? So that I could take that and revise. And so I'm not waiting until the end of the semester for feedback. I'm doing several checkpoints throughout the semester so that I'm checking in with my customers to make sure that they're satisfied, essentially. And so, a lot of fun, nerve-wracking, right? Because I didn't know if they were going to like it or if it did well, but it was a success. I've had students that just went through that first class that immediately got a job at the places that we went. So we do 5 to 7, depending on scheduling, site visits at breweries. We hold class off campus to get them involved in the culture of it and exposed. I think that's the big thing too. And so we're doing everything from teaching them just the basics of the brewing process and a tiny bit of science, not too heavy because that's truly not really what I'm serving with this class, but enough that if it sparks something in them, they can build upon that or get a job in industry and be able to lead a tour, for example. Teach them the basics of sensory awareness, teach them 25 styles. I teach them the beer judge certification process. If any of the students are interested in the Cicerone, after taking this class, they could go take the Cicerone beer server, and probably the next step up with just a little tiny self-study. So
Yeah.
it is made for micro-credentialing, although it's not a direct micro-credentialing course. It is considered like a prep class for
Right.
that, for those students. And so that's how I've created it to be as like dynamic and versatile as I could.
Yeah. And were you speaking to students before launching the first class to kind of gauge if there was interest amongst the students? Like, where were you pulling that feedback from?
Yeah, all places. So I was previously doing our internship coordination for one of our programs at Boise State. And so I would periodically get referred to from other people on campus, knowing that I had industry connections.
Yeah.
And so I was already kind of talking to a few students that were like interested in the space.
Yeah.
And then what did we do? Did I end up doing a survey? I'm trying to remember. That was a while ago. I had a subset, a small group, kind of like a focus group.
Yeah.
I floated some ideas. And like, I mean, overwhelmingly, if you have a conversation with a student, like, hey, would you take a class in fundamentals of beer? It was like, yes. And so that student feedback was really positive.
Yeah.
It wasn't substantive though. They didn't say like, I really want X, Y, Z.
Right.
And so because of that, I make it part of the introduction in the class, because that's always the hardest part, and everybody's very different in their goals. But essentially the students were overwhelmingly yes. Industry was like, yes, we want this thing, but Boise State was, I guess, operating from a position of caution, which I can completely commend and understand, because it is a risky space to be in, right? Part of class is sampling small amounts of beer to teach sensory analysis and to teach different styles. And so at any point that there's an exchange between, an instructor to a student that involves alcohol, you add an additional layer of liability. So
Yeah.
yes, I had to get a pulse check from industry, from, the customer. That's critical. I think a lot of people start things and they don't actually involve their customer at any stage.
Yeah.
And that's where you maybe see something that's got a misalignment between like this brilliant idea and
Yeah.
the disconnect. Because I very well could have made this for industry and industry only, and it would have looked very different. It wouldn't be serving the student population at Boise State that is taking this class.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, essentially that's the next generation of the future industry, which is, yeah, I think that's also a learning from the resort and hospitality program. It was designed for industry, but almost didn't meet the needs. And now it's designed more for the students, and back and having to kind of redesign for the industry. So, and so the first class was 20. And so now where are we at with enrollments? And
Oh, I should have pulled that for you. I'm so sorry. I didn't. Okay. So
you're maxing out the classes.
I am maxing out the classes.
And there's wait lists. And you have a max of 50.
Yes, I do. Yes, all those things. And I'm also building the last two classes of the certificate. So the certificate is fundamentals of craft beer, fundamentals of wine are required. And then students get to tailor what they want based on their industry goals. That's how I've been able to blend beer and wine together into one certificate, because as this grows, it likely will branch out into two or a degree, right?
Yeah.
We hope, fingers crossed. But as long as it's serving the demand in its current form, and then that will be great. So we'll have beer in person completely full, beer in online. I mean, I've issued permission numbers and students just haven't used them, so it will be full.
Yeah.
And that one may end up with a wait list as well. And then I've got two sections of online wine, and I'm considering doing an in-person wine class because students have consistently said after they've taken the online version of the 7-week class, which is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, that they want that face-to-face student experience. So that's a reiteration that's going to be coming. That'll be easier because I've already, built the online class.
Right.
And then just working on some of the other like applied wine classes and building those out. So like the harvest class, for example, and the production of wine, and then the sensory of wine class that teaches you wines of the world. So those are a few like fun spaces this fall that aren't full yet. So I do have seats available if anybody wants one, and is over 21.
Yeah.
And then, so we also were able to procure a 20-gallon, very big, almost pro homebrew system from Blakeman. It's going to be incredible. So we'll be able to use that for fall for first time, because we've been brewing at Brewers Haven. So again, just like working within the constraints of the university and compliance. And so now that, we've been able to pilot and demonstrate that this works, and we're doing it safely and students like it, you get more access and you get more support. And so the next, phase of this is just all about how to scale growth, how to bring on additional people so that it's not just, me as the founder, and we need other people speaking to students. And that's one thing I try to always do is like, yes, I worked in industry, but let's go talk to the guy with the rubber boots on right now that clocked in at 6 a.m. today.
Right.
Let's go have you meet him so you can see what it's like.
Yeah. Absolutely. Was there anything along this journey that maybe feedback from the students, or just where you're like needing to pivot and, was completely different and unexpected than what you previously had planned?
I thought I was going to have to get more technical. And so I have moved away from the very technical side of brewing, and I tried to give enough of the technical side that's digestible.
Yeah.
Right. Because this is open to any major. So anybody that's interested. And it does mean, like, because I have a good relationship over in engineering, I do get a lot of engineering students, and they're very math oriented and they eat it up.
Yeah.
So when you're explaining like how to calculate the formula for alcohol and how to calculate gravity units and backwards math it, they're like, this is great. This is easy. I get it. Right. But then your students that maybe don't have that math background, right, because it's not required for their major, and they're more of a social scientist or communication person, right, their skill set's very different. So I've had to scale that back. And then the other piece that I think is just like most surprising has been, I guess, like when I've done the sensory class, I try to involve them in the decisions I'm making for the wines that I bring, right?
Yeah.
And so what's been most surprising is how opinionated, right? And I appreciate that. But that wasn't me as a student, so I'm always just like, this is great. I absolutely love that you guys have a strong feeling one way or the other towards this. I can give you that, and I can supplement it to round it out. So an example is, a lot of students really want to focus on sparkling wine.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I will give them exposure to that.
Yeah.
But instead of like a whole flight of sparkling, we might do a Prosecco against a champagne.
Right. Yeah.
Or a Cava against a champagne. So you can tell. So that has been most surprising, how vocal they are about what they want.
Yeah.
I think. And I have adapted and I try to remain as flexible as possible. Sometimes it's super hard.
Yeah.
But
well, that's awesome. I know we're right at time. Is there any kind of final thoughts? And please share how anyone can find more information about your wine studies, and if they wanted to do it, how they could sign up and experience the class.
Sure. I started an Instagram account. That was one thing that I did to connect with my students. And again, to just do some kind of word of mouth type of advertising without going full-fledged marketing promo. So you can find me on Instagram. It's Sip the Science is my Instagram account that I have for students. And I just post things that would be connected to either the classes I'm teaching or the types of professional development or the cool stuff I'm working on. Occasionally you might get a highlight of me at a beer fest doing something fun, but that's part of the fun of Instagram. And then if you're interested in talking more, I love one-on-one meetings, happy to meet in person on Zoom or just chat through email if someone has questions. And that's Amanda Ryan at boisestate.edu. And then we have a small website that is in the process of getting built out. And so you can find that right now. It's boisestate.edu/CID/beverage studies.
Awesome. We need to get you a shortened URL. I have that for RHM, so I can help you do that.
That would be amazing. It's on my to-do list, Ashley, but my to-do list is very long.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, and I appreciate your time.
Sure. I hope this was good, Ashley. Thank you for interviewing me.
Amazing.